ॐ सहनौ भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। On the eve of 8th International Day of Yoga and Azadi Ki Amrit Mahotsav, Ritambhara Prajna has organized a session particularly to celebrate the yoga, the International Day celebration, as well as the efficacy, ethics and truth behind the yoga. In these days, yoga, though a moksha shastra, whose main intention is to be bliss, is to get the bliss and to be liberated. In this context, the main idea of yoga is the basic divinity of the human being, the evolutionary tree, who has attained the highest point and has evolved a lot more physically. But the only thing that is still being evaluated is the spirituality and the betterment of himself, the subject himself, the ratio of which, the bliss of which, the grace of which is perpetuated in the daily life and his thinking in his rationality. In these days also, we are finding that the system of yoga, the basic philosophy of Hindu system, is being explained, is being observed, is being inferred in the different complexities, different perspectives, and in different dynamics. In this regard, my intention today is to see this therapeutic part of the yoga, which is one of the primary stage or in the ongoing process stage. Some evolution, some influences has been given into the human frame, his physical, mental frame, as also like the different therapeutic system that gives the human being a sense of well-being so that he can perform his daily routine and also his limitations, his intention, his concept of living. So, before going into the discussion, we must see the three things at first. What is the health? What is the object of health? What is the primary aims of the health service? Similarly, what is yoga? What is the main objective and what is the aim of yoga? And what is the relation and what is the difference between the well-being, fitness and health as well. According to the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Though still it is not been clear whether this is a final definition of health. But one thing to be considered, that it has a three components: physical, mental and social. And another thing, very point to be noted, that it is a state. That means it is to be attained, it is to be maintained, and it is always variable. It is not fixed. So, continuous process is going on, as a life is a dynamics. So every possibility, every probability putting its impression on the changing dynamicity of a living being. The physical well-being means a person who is in a good health, have good bodily functions, he can process his working capacity at its highest level or at its peak. It does not mean that there is an absence of disease, it does not mean that there is some physical challenge in his system. Regular exercise, balanced nutrition and adequate rest can make a good health, but cannot satisfy the well-being, cannot finally reach to a state of health. Because when this man is in a good physical condition, he did not employ himself in a good mental makeup, he cannot maintain a good moral character. If he cannot make a good moral character, he can make some notions which can make some impressions on his psychology that will perpetuate in his health condition, and that will not help him to proceed and to prosper and to rectify and to go for the divinity that is already within him. When these things are being altered, man goes for the medical treatment. And this medical treatment does not mean that it is only a curative or suppressive or palliative. It means there is a scope of promotion of health, where health can be promoted to such a level so that he can enjoy himself, he can preserve himself, because I have already seen it as a state, so it is always variable, always changeable. So I have to make some procedure so that it can be static. And another is rehabilitation. That where has been some problem that can be sidelined, that can be taken care of with some rehabilitative measure so that he can perform his function properly. As of, I can cite some examples, like some physically challenged person can make a good sports activity, can good mental activity. A person like swimmer Masud can cross the English Channel. Stephen Hawking, a captivating personality, is in highest mental faculty. He can enjoy his life. He can say that his life is a purposeful life, and his life is not only meant for him, it is meant for the science, meant for the knowledge, and also for the betterment of the humankind. So here again comes some of the points: his own, his surroundings, his social activities. So a man is always a personality with not only a physical activity but also a mental activity, where his emotional, social and psychological well-being is always concerned. Mental health is as important as of physical health, and good moral health is not only categorized by absence of deformity, absence of anxiety, absence of depression or of any disorder. The mental health is a good health who can enjoy life, who can bounce back after difficult experiences and adversities, can balance different elements of life such as family and finances, feel himself safe and secure, and achieve their full potential. So, this physical and mental being associated with his surrounding, his society, his social life, his behavior with the other peoples makes him a good man. But how he achieve himself as an individual? As an individual, he can only be a good person when he think for the purpose, the main theme question, who am I and what am I? This spirituality is the main thing that evolved personality, evolved animal like human being is core question, the answer he always sought for. In relation to the disease, we can say that there are some diseases called acute disease, called chronic disease, and some indispositions. And in communicable disease, where there is a symptom of infections, symptoms of contagiousness, that can be controlled by hygiene, good environment, good lifestyle, and in non-communicable diseases, that is the main concern, where we can mainly think of promotion of health, preservation of health, and the yogic therapeutic system can show its efficacy, like type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and metabolic disorders, cardiometabolic syndrome, like this. These are non-communicable diseases, but these are the main culprit of the maximum mortality rate throughout the world. The lifestyle related diseases, the physical diseases, the physical habit, sedentary behavior, sleep, good food cannot restore all these things. Here, after all these things, I will come to the second point in the perspective of homeopathy. Like the yogic system, which was perpetuated from the ancient times, that is the Vedic times, the times of Shrutis, the prehistoric time to the modern times, it has been emphasized in different Upanishads, different scriptures, different Puranas, that which is modified and codified by Maharishi Patanjali and known as the yogic system or Yoga Shastra or Patanjali Yoga Shastra. In homeopathy, the same idea of similimum to fight the disease process with the similar is honored by Aristotle, Hippocrates and others, philosophers and doctors or physicians. Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, on his name the system of homeopathy is recognized. In his masterpiece Organon of Homeopathy, in the aphorism number 9, he said, in the healthy condition of the man, the spiritual vital force, autocracy, the dynamism that animated the material body, the organism, rules with the unbounded sway and retain all the parts of the organism in admirable, harmonious vital operations with respect to both sensation and function, so that our indwelling, reason-gifted mind can employ the living, healthy mechanism for the highest purpose of life. So, after the definition of World Health Organization, the definition of health according to Hahnemann is much more advanced. First of all, the man in his healthy condition. The man in his healthy condition means, so the man has different conditions, one of which is a healthy condition. How this healthy condition is maintained? When it is dynamized by the spiritual vital force, the autocracy. So there is the life force or the pranic force that animate the material body, the organism. So the vital principle act in the material body and makes the body a dynamic form. When it is being dynamized, it has act as an individual, it acts as a character with its all physical effort and its mental effort. The vital force, the autonom, the autocracy, the dynamism is again can be judged with the Taittiriya Upanishad, like the Panchakosha theory, Annamaya Kosh, Pranamaya Kosh, Manomaya Kosh, Vigyanmaya Kosh and Anandamaya Kosh. So the pranic energy is the main thing that governs the physical body and the mental body. So we are in consonance with the yogic philosophy and the homeopathic theory. And it is continuously with unbounded sway. It is continuous with unbounded sway, it cannot be obstructed. It is retain all the parts of the organism and in admirable vital operations. When we go in the physiology part, there we call a hemostasis. That is, there is a balance between all the organic system. Like in a big industry, there are different departments, different sections. They act accordingly, but they work when cohesively, with the balance to all the system, all the parts of the body. Then only the system runs in a harmonious way. If there is any breakage in the system, the same thing will alter the next part of the system. But when there is a problem or when there is an acceleration, there will be a similar acceleration or deceleration on the part, so that the balance or hemostasis is maintained. Like, as I am sitting here, my heartbeat can be 80 to 100 per minute. But if I get angry, if I get frightened, if I run, it may comes up to 150, 140 or whatever it may be. But there is a balance. It cannot be go far beyond. When it accelerates, then the respiratory rate simultaneously increases. And when the same thing goes back to normalcy, when I come to a standstill condition, then the heart rate falls down, it comes to the normalcy again, the respiratory rate comes down again. So the balance, according to the necessity, according to the condition of the body, different system activate, accelerate, decelerate, so that the physiology or the balance is maintained. This homeostasis is to be maintained wherever the system as a living being wants to work as a harmonious way. And this thing also be noticed by the definition of health in the system of homeopathy. Next, he says, in admirable vital operations with the respect of both sensation and functions. So the sensation and the sensory system, nervous system, with the help of the endocrinal system, with the 5 organs like the sensory organs, eyes, ears, tongue, skin, etc. all are involved with the sensory organs. Again, the 5 sensory organs, when it comes to the motor activity, works with the 5 karmendriya. What is here in Yoga Shastra is reported as Pak, Pani, Pak, Payu, Vasta. So we are always in consonance, we are always in synergy with the system of therapeutic and the yogic philosophy. When all these things are maintained, hemostasis is maintained, physical part is maintained, moral part is maintained, pranic energy is flowing as a very harmonious way, then the sensory and motor functions are normal, our neuroendocrine systems are normal. Then only we can employ our reason-gifted minded of the living health mechanism for the higher purposes of life. So, after being restored all these things in a balanced way, in a harmonious way, what is the purpose? We have to employ ourselves for the higher purposes of our existence. So we have to make some search, some inquisitiveness for the benefit, for the root of the myself as well as for the society. Our higher purpose is my spiritual development, is my spiritual evolution. So this spiritual evolution, when it comes into this primary health, so the physical, mental, social, everything has been coming into contact. Man becomes creative, man becomes inquisitive, man becomes balanced. So there is the perfect set of system that makes a man healthy. In this respect, I also want to emphasize that in our Upanishadic system, Shastra means Shastha. Sa means self and Stha means sthit or in fix. So when and only when we are fixed to our own self, that is the Shasharu, then and then only one can make himself healthy. So in this perspective, I have seen the definition of World Health Organization, we have seen the homeopathical concept, we have seen the yogic concept. All these things are in common parlance, that everything, all these parameters are related to the betterment of the individual to a state, not only in fitness, not only in wellness, but to a state where man can employ for the higher purposes of this existence. So all come to this common platform. Furthermore, when we go to these theories of system, first of all, we can see that basic theory of homeopathy lies basically concept of chronic miasm, that is the sora, syphilis and psychosis, are the 3 main reasons, like the Shatta Raja Gunas of the basic theories of Sankhya and Yoga philosophy. These 2 things can make several permutations and combinations that make a person individual. The concept of sora, that is non-mineral miasm, the syphilis and psychosis, the two mineral miasms, they all are present in a system, but their balance, their permutations and combinations makes a man individualistic. His own character is built, his own propensity, his susceptibility to disease, his own immunity is developed, so that he can develop himself, he can fight with the disease organism, he can make all these things. In homeopathy, we see that along with the physical symptom, we always put great pressure on the symptom of mental symptoms. These mental symptoms, the mind is another thing which is not only the things which is in broader aspect, it is the chitta, where is man, buddhi, ahankara. These three things mean the antarkarana. So the antarkarana is the platform on which the mind can show his performance. The mental symptom brings something plus behind his in between, where from these mental symptoms are evolved. So when we have to go for mental symptom, we have to see the symptoms and then the reason behind it. Why a man is depressed? The mental symptom is depressed. He wants to like hungry. He feels these things. He likes to take sweet things. So these are the things. He is very cruel. He is very energetic. All these things put these characteristic feelings. Behind there is the man. Behind there is the buddhi. There is the ahankara. So this man, buddhi, ahankara makes the personality on which the other things are developed. So the sora, syphilis and psychosis, the balance between them makes the characteristic personality of a human being. The sign and symptoms, the propensity, the susceptibility, all depends upon the thing that is the main cause of these three factors, like the Biopitta Cup theory of the Ayurvedic system. So there is the basically all these things have some common things, that is the three gunas, that is Sattva, Raja, Tama, three miasm, sora, syphilis, psychosis, and in Ayurveda, Biopitta and cough. So all these endeavors, whenever we see a symptom, this attitude, where from it comes from, this is to be inquired of. This is things to decide. If we, another interesting things I must mention here, in our chanting, in our pranam mantra, we see that Shanti, Shanti and Shanti. These Shanti, Shanti, Shanti are the thousands and millions of sorrows. They are grouped into only three categories of diksha, that is Adhidevic, Adhibhautik and Adhyatmik diksha. Similarly, all the disease condition can be grouped in a different nomenclature, but the main origin, all the things are the same, these three miasmatic background. If this miasmatic background is balanced, then the symptoms, that is what is to be gravest, cannot be fulfilled. Another interesting findings is that, suppose in a very small child, there is everything, we cannot say how he will be developed, how he will be achieved. But a homeopath who is conversant with this homeopathic philosophy can see the play of these three miasms, the sora, syphilis and psychosis. If that can be seen, it is evident that by proper homeopathic medication, that can be nipped apart. The probability of cardiac complications in near future, the characteristics of coming up into as a diabetic patient, his propensity to cause the suicide, his propensity to make a good player, his activity, all this can be short out on this day. So a patient who has to be suffered in near future, if being treated by homeopathy, these things will become in a very short manner or in a delayed manner, so that he can project himself, he can employ himself for the betterment of the disease. And though the yoga, which is a theory by which he can come across to the main cause of the difference of panchaklesha. So to betterment of these things, the tamaguns, is to be sort of, his Rajagun is to be activated, and ultimately he should be fixed in the state of Satyagun in the major point in Rajas and first second point, and Tamas to be in the third point. But nothing can be obstructed. All these things, Sattva, Raja and Tamo is required. If there is no Tamo, there will be no physical body. And all these things is another important feature in common, that all these things in common is that it is all the condensed form of consciousness. That Swamiji has said, it is in his prayer son of Belur Chida Ghanakar. That is the consciousness, the Chid comes into the solid form, that Chid Ghanakar. And he also says Nirguna Gunamaya, that Sattva, Raja, Tama is in a Nirguna form when he is in a balanced state. When it is being committed, it comes into gunas. It takes the form. So the basic principle, when the solar psychosis is in a common state, it is in the same consciousness is in the man, which is in the balanced state. When it is being imbalanced, the disease manifested. And also the same thing is implied in the drug substances, where it is being activated from Sthula to Shukha to his Karana, so that it is being dynamized. When this dynamized is similarly accentuated or in practice with similarity, if the dynamist acts with the dynamist and makes the thing effective, that is being told in the most comprehensive way, most gentle way, most permanent way. That can be done by only the homeopathic system. And there is a yoga system which is also practicing the things that is the main for the Koival or liberation. In the process, how it is to be achieved, it cannot be done. It is to be experienced. It is written in the scripture. It is to be conceptualized, and it is to be experienced in his own life. And how he can experience? He can experience this in the different parts of yoga: Jnana yoga, Karma yoga, Bhakti yoga, and Raja yoga. In this perplex, the most comprehensive way in Patanjali yoga system, in the eightfold system, the first two systems are the Jama and the Niyama. The funny enough is that under the Jama we have Ahimsa, Sattva, Asteya, Aparigraha and Brahmacharya, and all these things are not very natural and common to the individual or human being. Our propensity is on the opposite side. So if I want to put oneself, stay Ahimsa, stay in Satya, then it is very hard work and difficult for him. If a man with this soric capacity, the chitta is never in a ekadra or niruddha. It is always in a vacillated mood, that is in kipta or vikshitta. In a where there is a highest mode of syphilis or psychosis, then his mind is always in a destructive mood. He cannot fix himself for the asteya or ahimsa. It is his own natural propensity to steal something. But through homeopathic medication, if the solar syphilis psychosis balance is maintained or somehow is regulated, then his mind, which was diverted for the stealing, now he cannot even think of stealing anything. So the Jama Niyama practice is much more easier and beneficial for the person who was once again was in a state of thinking of bad habits. So it is naturally going on. And after that, with the help of homeopathic medication, if one goes for the yoga system, he can achieve it much more faster and in more beneficial way. So the homeopathy is influencing and helping a yogic practitioner. So these two things are coming into side by side. And the person who is in another side, the person who is practicing yoga, is so sensitized himself that the homeopathic dynamic medicine, the principle of medicine, that medicine that is so energized, so captivated, so dynamic, is at very deep level. So the dose and remedy should be different from that a common man and to a yogi man, because he is much more sensitized. he is much more activated state of life. So the homeopathic drug selection, homeopathic potency selection, homeopathic dose selection will be different because the man is much more sensitive. We talk about the promotional health. The man who is so sensitized can abate the infectious propensity or the dynamic propensity of a bacteria or virus because his sensitivity is fine enough, his immunity is higher enough to fight against all these things. So vice versa, as homeopath helps him to maintain the balance of Surasikuti psychosis, the yoga helps him to balance the ultimate gunas of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. And the Ayurvedic also can do some help in maintaining the Vayu, Pitta and Kapha dosha, but they are acting plainly or mainly on the Sthula Sharira. But homeopathy and yoga increases himself, elevate themselves from the Sthula Sharir to the Shukha Sharir and to the Karana Sharir. They believe that the prana in the human individual, the prana in the affecting individual, and the prana in the medicinal agent, all at the same level, in the cosmic prana and the individual prana, the macrocosm and microcosm, that the same consciousness is the living in this universe. And this is the things, this is the beauty of the creature, and where we all amalgamate here. There is no question of separation. The concept of health as a holistic comes when this yogic perspective and the homeopathic perspective comes into the way, and our existence as a common consciousness is also comes into existence. So there is a union between this physical entity, this mental entity, spiritual existence as a Jivatma, and it comes into the amalgamation with the Paramatma. So the yoga definition of Juj Samadho, Juj Sanjamani and the Jujit Yoga comes into play, so that this mechanism of microcosm goes into the macrocosm, amalgamate into macrocosm. The languages are different. The languages are different, where we call that macrocosm comes into the microcosm comes into the macrocosm. The consciousness of the human being or the Jivatma goes into the consciousness into the higher level, that is Paramatman, and there is a system that is being covered in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as the Yoga Karmashu Kaushalam. And the activities of our life, whether it is a Jnana Yoga, whether it is a Bhakti Yoga, whether it is a Karma Yoga, it's always, we have to be in the common parlance of 24 into 7 into 6, 365. That is Yogastha Kurikarman. Whatever we perform, whatever we do is performed in a yogic way, because we are always in a system that melts us with these things. And all these things has to be done in a good physique. For that, asanas is required, the body is to be balanced, that's why pranayama is required. And this pranayama and the asana, when makes the body in a controlled and in a stable condition, that is Thiram Shukham, then only the Prajna Shaitanya, that is the comprehensiveness when attained, there comes the Sthiti Prabhaha, the two opposite terms in a common parlance, that is the static condition and dynamic condition. That is staticity of the physical body and the dynamicity of the mental faculties to the evolution through the concentration, focusing, attention, memorizing. That comes with the Shraddha, Vidya, Sriti. This Upaya Pratyaya, this is Upaya mechanism, as leads us to a state of health, that is to a state of Ananda, that is to a state of liberation. And these are the main sides. Many more advancement, many more researches and many more discussions are required. I think that this is the initiation of this program. We will invite much more talks, much more debate on this issue, so that we can come closer. And thus Purna, it comes into from the Purna and it amalgamates into the Purna. So all the dukkha's goes abated. Because dukkha's will be there, our reaction will be different. Because we usually respond, we usually react. But through the yogas and through the system of support of homeopathic system, we need to be respond. As I respond, I don't react. So these are the system through the homeopathy, through the system of Indian philosophical system of yoga, can work together, can come together for the essential nature of man, for the higher purposes of his living. So there is the thing, there is ample scope to discuss, ample scope to practice, ample scope to perceive. With all these invitations, I want to conclude today's lecture with a very, very earnest desire that these things will be discussed elaborately. There is the ample scope of researches so that we can prosper, we can employ ourselves for the higher purposes, not only for ourselves. These objective changes, these subjective changes, this knowledge of avidya ultimately goes into the system of vidya, and ultimately we can go to the Brahman. We can say Aham Brahmasmi. Thank you. Thank you.